When it comes to confidence building and in general, women showing up as her whole self, there's something to that is for me, my own journey reflection and what I have heard, self-compassion, like imposter syndrome, I still suffer on a daily basis. So self-compassion is, I believe, quite important thing to talk about. So with that, Pascal, what role does self-compassion play in sustaining success, especially during career transitions or setbacks?
I think that's a really important question too. I think self-compassion is where during transitional times for us as women, and that could be mostly mid-career to late career, depending on what's happening in our life journey at the time, whether it's fertility, menopause, caregiving, whatever's happening in our journey, where we allow ourselves to not operate at that same level all the time and not remove ourselves from the equation. So I think a lot of top performers, if we're not at the top all the time, self-reflectively, we exit ourselves out. So we know we enter the workforce at the same rate as men when we start our careers. And then we exit, 1 in 10 women exit between 40 and 55 due to menopausal issues, symptoms. A quarter of us have severe issues with hormonal changes that are not supported. And instead of us saying, okay, like I need help, we look at our results. What's happening? I can't handle it. I'm not able to care for my parents. My kids miss me. My work is suffering. I'm going to take some time off. I'm going to step back. And we are ruining our own pipelines, in our career because we're not even getting to the executive role because women between 40 and 55 self-exit. We self-identify as not performing to what we thought that we would. So having self-compassion and allowing ourselves to have moments during, specific career cycles or life cycles, and then having that cultural shift in the office to allow for us to have moments where we're not performing at our peak all the time. I think that's self-compassion for us, realizing that it's just a cycle. We will come back. We need some supports. And from a leadership perspective, protecting our mid-career folks, women who need that extra support, and we can reach out to them and surround that, but it's a cultural shift too. So the self-compassion, just to reiterate what I'm saying, is allowing ourselves moments in life stages to not perform, the way that we thought that we would perform and not exiting out. And then from a leadership perspective, if you're seeing your women mid-career cycle start to exit out or needing support, it's up to us to make sure that they feel supported and they have whatever it takes to keep them in that pipeline. Yeah.
Do I have permission to ask a question that is not here? So the guilt, right? The self-compassion is one layer, and another layer is the guilt that we feel when, so for me, my daughter is right here, the guilt of leaving her at home, even though I know she's well taken care of by her dad, and not right now I have my parents with me too, so she's well taken care of, but the role mom plays is different from all the other roles that played by other members of family. So that guilt is always it's heavy. How did you navigate this through? I know, Pascal, now you have grown daughter. What did you do to manage that? And what have you seen other women, how they are managing that? And Jillian too, how other women are managing. And Jamie, I think men talk less about it. I know my husband also feels that, but the way that he communicates that is quite different from how I communicate and how I feel. So would love for all the panelists to touch this topic, please.
Well, I think I managed the way that I hope that my team doesn't have to manage, and that is by doing more, sleeping less, being stressed, trying to deliver. And I mean, that's the truth, right? Like, I think before, the ones that stayed was at a sacrifice, like a personal sacrifice to our mental health, to our sleep. Um, and there are parts of us that we had to leave behind to continue to manage and be there for our kids, I think. What I would hope for my younger team is that we allow some grace during those periods. So that's flexibility in hours. Like, if you want to work 7 to 3 or 7 to 12 and you get your work, like, that's okay. You know, if you want to work 4-day weeks or 3-day weeks or whatever you need to have that balance, which I wish that I feel like my health would have been better. My mental health would have been better. I would have been more present with my kids. I read the stories, but did I really do all the voices? You know, like I coach basketball, but that was it. You know, the rest on vacations, I maybe didn't play in the sand as much as I could. Like, I really think that I would have done better if I had been more vocal and had a bit more self-compassion.
So I love, Mihai, how you kind of talked a little bit about the imposter syndrome, because I actually have a view, at least this is true for me, that when I'm feeling like my ego showing up, that actually turns into self-criticism for me. And I see my women around me, and we're all doing the same thing. And so I do not have children, and there is a role for us to play in the workplace that is pretty significant because when you're a mom, I have friends who are in this, you are in it, you do not see it. And so, one of the things we need to start to do is we need to start to recognize that when women leave the workplace for whatever reason, it could be for their children, it could be, you know, because you woke up today and your daughter's sick and you can't get to work, or it could be because something came up in the family. We know that these are skills that women are learning, and we have to stop pretending that they just disappeared from the workplace, or that they're not getting the FaceTime, or that they aren't as engaged as the people who are showing up every single day consistently. I value these skills just as much as the people who stay in the workplace to do the long hours. I value the multitasking. I value the empathy. I value what they bring to the workplace in a totally different dimension. And so, you know, hey, moms, you are doing an amazing job. And the people who are leaders in this industry, let's start celebrating that and bringing these skills into our workplace and recognizing them, especially with AI coming. We got to get that stereotype out of the system, and we got to start recognizing that these skills are the future. These are our humanity skills. This is our currency. And I think moms are going to get there a lot faster than people who aren't thrown into that, like they're in it, right? So this is my commitment.
Right. I guess to a different perspective. So I'm a father of two young girls, 9 and 12, and you know, you talk about guilt, and I certainly, I think the way that I don't know if I won't speak for all men, but at least for myself, from a father perspective, yeah, I definitely think about intentionally how I spend my time, how much time I spend at work, how much time I make myself available for my girls, because at least for me, like one of my most important missions, if you will, I think, is to try and raise confident women, right? And I don't know how to do that. I'm working on it, but I do know that the role of men, for example, is critical in that, right? And I think as they grow up, we have just as much as of a responsibility to make sure that they're learning the right behaviors, interacting with the right people, and then just feel good about themselves, so that when they get into an older situation, they feel you know, pressure or constraint of some kind. They feel you know, good inside of themselves to be able to solve those problems, or to, you know, to meet that confrontation, whatever it is. So and I to set all of that up, I do think it means some level of balance, and making sure that, you know, not just the mothers, but also the fathers, or whomever else is in the world, is available and supportive. And to do that, yeah, probably means that you should not feel as guilty about prioritizing home life just as much as work life. There's someone said at one point in time that really stuck with me. It was, is your family getting the best of you or the rest of you? And so I just think as we live our lives, we need to have balance.
Thank you. So want to talk about organizational culture, and I will look to you, Jamie, for this question. One thing that I observed especially when we were new parents, when we had newborn baby, the culture that my husband was in, quite male dominant industry that he was in, he didn't feel comfortable to raise hand. Okay, today I need time off to go doctor's appointment with my baby. Nobody is doing that inside of his organization or his industry. Like, men just do not do that. So it was very uncomfortable and difficult thing for him to do. For our culture, ProServeIT and Line Zero, we have such flexible culture that whether you are mom or dad, we can raise hand and take the time off that we need. But that does not happen everywhere, even today. When we work Line Zero, we work with many different companies across the globe now. What have you seen the role of org culture that has in employees' general well-being? Yes, parenthood, and plus, what role does it play, and what role leadership plays?
So it's interesting. I'm going to give a different answer than probably would have even 2 weeks ago. So last week was March break. I took off Friday. My youngest daughter wanted to have like a play date with a couple of her friends. We went to the mall. We played some arcade games, had some food. It was fun, right? And it was interesting when I was talking to the mother of one of the girls afterwards when she was picking it up. She was, "Oh, this is great. Thank you so much." And the daughter, on the car ride home, she was talking to my daughter and said, "My mom says that you are who you hang around." And I just like, oh, that's so interesting, right? That's something that her mother was kind of instilling in her and talking about around, who you behave. So I think when we take a step back from that and look at it where we are at work, I think in a large part where we choose to spend what ends up being the most time we spend with actual people says a lot about who we are, but it also we kind of have through osmosis this sense that we can absorb others' culture and we give as well as we receive from that perspective. So I think the responsibility from a leadership perspective is probably twofold, right? One, I think that it is up to everyone in this room, right? Because I think we're all leaders. It doesn't matter what your title is. Everyone has influence, and every one of us is a leader in our own right. It's about setting the tone and making sure that we are living our values. But conversely, it's also recognizing that you are who you hang around. You are who you are at work. And so if assuming you have that spot where you feel empowered, where you feel supported, where you have the ability to make those choices and compromises at times, I think that's really important. So I think that's our job as stewards or as leaders, is to make sure that we create the space and make sure that it is an environment where people feel they belong. And I think in that type of environment, it will make, I don't want to say everyone will become the same, but it'll be a more cohesive and supportive environment.
So I have permission that is not on the list. The culture and taking care of people is one aspect of running a business. At business, we need to run efficiently, effectively, and have to have profit to exist. Without that, we cannot exist. So all this cultural aspect and accommodation and taking care of people, and another side of the equation of accountability, driving result, responsibility, based on your experience, how have you managed the balance that needs to exist inside of business environment?
I love your unplanned questions, Mihai. So I think that what I've seen is we can't do the check mark box of mentorship. And this is one thing that I think we need to improve on. The research will show we over mentor and we don't do enough sponsorship and we don't do enough allies. I always think of like when you think of mentoring is like your coach, it's holding you accountable. It's what I say to you. Sponsorship is so much more important because it's what I say about you. And that's where you can, make someone visible, give stretch assignments, and make sure that people are top of mind that otherwise would be completely invincible. And then we need to take mentoring and push the boundaries. We need to do reverse mentoring, right? We're about to enter into a totally different way of working. I want to learn from the people who are coming into the workforce, not just the people above me. And I want to make sure that there's a lot of, discussion across complete diversity of thought. And then the last thing I would say is, I'm so delighted to see the men in the room who have come here because you are such an important part of being an ally. We can't do sponsorship without the allies of the men in the room, and it takes all of us to get there. But everything I am saying has nothing to do with profitability. It has to do with, let's call it the non-promotable tasks. And so this does require commitment. It does require effort. I myself remember making a commitment at some point in my career because I saw that people were still going through the hard stuff as I did. And I just said, okay, every time, every year, I'm just going to pick somebody and I'm going to sponsor them. Right. And that's actually what it actually will take is for all of us to just do that one little thing. This has nothing to do with running the business. This has to do with humans, and humans are our business. And so that, to me, that keeps me balanced.
I love that. I really think it is a leadership role to treat people like I think we can all hit the numbers in a short period of time. Like you see the startups, everybody's working their, rears off and they're delivering but if you want that long-term success, it really is the culture and how you treat people and how you treat yourself. So if your team doesn't have empathy and compassion because you don't have it or display it, like your culture will suffer very, in very short order. I think that needs to feed into all of your policies as well. So that flexibility and looking at mid-career support will be key to ongoing. Like we can always hire a young go-getter, but how are we supporting them, during the years that the data is showing us that they're taking more medication, they're on disability more. So, just making sure that your policies reflect how you feel as a leader, because at the end of the day, people don't always ask for help.
Really quickly, I think it's important to recognize too that people need balance, right? And it's okay, I think, as leaders to say, you know what, you need some time for yourself or you have something going on, make sure that you're prioritizing yourself. Because I think if we look at it from like a capitalistic perspective, I'm not suggesting this is the way to look at things, but if you look at things from, a business shareholder perspective, we're not going to get people need to feel supported and they need to make sure, like if someone's thinking about their mother, their daughter, their brother, their family, they're not providing their best. So it's in everyone's interest to make sure that everyone feels supported. If there's something that needs to be taken care of, support them to make sure they can get that taken care of. That's serving them better. That's serving yourself better. That's serving everyone better. So I don't know if that sounded too, negative in any way, but I think the intent is that it is okay, like support people. And I think they will appreciate that. And it's just a better world.
If I share my story a bit here, when I look back, given my personality want to go above and beyond, the back to imposter syndrome. Nothing feels enough, good enough, so I just keep going. But I have been with ProServeIT last 10 years. May 1 this year, May 1 is 10-year anniversary. Amy, Eric. 10-year anniversary. When I think about my own behavior, because was trust, because there was love, a genuine love and care for me as human being by my upper management, Eric and Jamie in this room, and others. Because of that, I wanted to go even more. And when they challenged me, I didn't take that as attack because of that baseline was there. When I think about previous employment where that trust and love was absent, my reaction, same person, right? Same person, but it was different. And my team members are here. Speak up, please, if I say something that is not aligned, but I believe, at least I believe, again, correct me if I'm wrong, I have permission to push them and challenge them and sometimes directly communicate you are not meeting expectation because of all the other things that I have been doing with them last however many years throughout their employment. I have shown up and each relationship is different, right? Each relationship, we built that. Because of that, I believe I have permission to push them hard and drive results that we can be proud of. And I believe they are all showing up as 150% of themselves every single day because they also feel that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yes, driving result is important. When it is not there, work itself also becomes not fun, right? What are we doing? Like why am I wasting my life here, right? When the results are not there, it's not just not fun. So yeah, it's all related. Jillian, pension. Pension planning is often overlooked. I think before I met you a few years ago, my knowledge level about pension was a lot lower. Thanks to you, now I know more, but it still is in a way overlooked. What should women, especially younger professionals, be paying attention to today? And maybe more generally speaking, financial well-being. What type of advice that you can give to younger professionals?
Yeah. So I think when we think about let's talk about some facts and get the elephant out of the room here when it comes to retirement and savings, right? Retirement, both at the government level and if you have a workplace plan, is tied to earnings, right? And so there is this, we've got to make sure that we advocate for ourselves for being at the right pay level, and we don't realize in the moment if we make concessions that we're actually pushing this idea of saving more down the road. There is a direct connection there, and that often is something we don't think about. The other thing is we're going to live longer. Right. I don't know about you, but I've got my dream of a mansion with all my favorite women, and we're all going to go and live there. But research shows that oftentimes women won't actually engage in long-term planning until they actually are done working. And by then it will be too late. And so, women have been sitting in circles and talking to each other since the beginning of time. Right? This is what we do. And we are actually really, really good at having the hard conversations about money. And if we do studies on, okay, would you rather have $10 this week or $20 next week, women will wait for the $20, right? And so it does go back to confidence. But, I also want to kind of just call out that, I kind of planted this seed with the confidence, but, tools aren't necessarily made for women either. right? We're going to be in and out of the workforce. We're going to take pauses. We're going to have exceptions along the way. And I will tell you that if you're going online or if you're just using some type of a planning tool that's going to project exactly that number that you need when you retire, those tools are systemically incorrect. They assume a very linear career path. They assume you're always making more money in that career path, and they are not made for women. Then when you try to go and potentially look for advice or to talk to somebody, oftentimes those tend to be men. And there's nothing wrong with a male financial advisor. We need all kinds and all personalities, but there will be certain times in your life where they won't understand what you are going through. Women need women who have empathy and understanding to really understand what is getting in the way, what are our fears, what do we need to do to get that feeling of well-being. Well-being for us is not a number, it's not an ambition, it's an emotion, and it's something that becomes part of our identity and gets all wrapped up in perfection and what's good enough. So when we think about retirement, this is a long journey, but women can do this really, really well, and we can do it really well with each other. I've done lots and lots of just getting into a room with a whole bunch of women. Let's sit down and let's just talk about money and what it means to us, what scares us, and how we can do this better. And let's just keep doing that, right? This is how we're going to change the tools. This is how we're going to change the system. This is how we're going to be able to push things that are built for us. And there is, since I've started in this industry 25 years ago, we are making progress. We see, stuff for women in the financial markets right now that is built for us. That is because we advocated for it and because we asked for it. So just keep going and, advocate for yourself. It's yours, right? This is however you want to do it. There's no wrong way.
Thank you, Julian. Pascal. So another equation is benefit, right? Companies have pensions and other benefits, and the health benefits is another aspect. So wellness benefits are evolving rapidly, given how our population is evolving and technologies and flexible work and so on. What should women be advocating for in their workplaces to better support their body and mind?
So I just want to say something about what Jillian just talked about quickly. Not that it was my question, but since we're on a panel, the stats of 1 in 10 women exiting the workforce between 40 and 55, and more than 30% are taking less money or less responsibility, like actually planning for that in our financial plan or even with our well-being is more important. So I take your point, and it's so important. So what we should be advocating for is not just the benefits, but the access to the benefits. And we talk about this all the time, every day with our clients. But, you can have the flex spend, but what do I do with it? Do I have a hormonal doctor to talk to? Do I have ongoing mental health supports when I need it? We know, I mentioned these stats before, we know that the claims for disability, for mental health, depression, anxiety, sleep disorder, all rise between 40 and 55. So we need people coming into the workforce, letting us know how we can get support. Like when we're not 40 to 55, we don't think, oh, it's not going to happen to me. Just like my teenager is going to be amazing. When they're young, oh, it's not going to happen to me. Like we need to start talking about these, shifts in our workforce right when you come in. Benefit plans are built based on early career family building, but we see that when we need it the most is actually mid-career. And if we don't take a step back and look at modular benefits that, let's just rip up the plan. It doesn't have to be the same for everybody. Flex spends are great, but really we could take a huge step back and even look at modular benefits based on age, okay, or based on need, which could have significant mental health resources. So advocate for access, not for more benefits. So this is great, but how do I actually speak to a doctor that's not going to tell me I'm exactly the same as everybody else? Because my symptoms will be very different.
Because I know Pascal quite well and how passionate you are about making sure people take care of themselves. Another unplanned question. but I know it is all in your head already. If you give three top three things that everyone in this room, both women and men, can do right now, even however small it is, what would they be?
I love that question. Okay, so I'm a big advocate of the 1% rule. So if we look back to the original question, like how much we hold ourselves to, for example, like we need to be perfect, right? Like we need to fit into our clothes from when we were 20. We need to be running that marathon instead of like we're really hard on ourselves. But if we look at the 1% rule and think if I shifted my sleep by 1%, my eating by 1%, then you're looking at significant gains. So I'm just going to give you an example. I used to say that I slept terrible. How are you feeling? Oh man, like I sleep so bad. And so I thought, okay, I'm going to track my sleep and like figure out what's going on. So I purchased one of those Aura rings about 3 years ago, and the data was crazy. I'm like, I actually sleep amazing. I sleep 8 hours a night, like without fault. And I like, why am I waking up so tired? Right. So then I started looking at the data thinking it's not how much I sleep, it's the quality of sleep. So I shifted a couple of things. Like anyone can look this up. Like, what does my room look like? Am I having wine before bed? Am I eating too close to when I go to sleep? And I shifted just a couple of things, 1%, and it had a significant impact on my health. Sleep is the number one. So I would say get the data, get your own baseline, and figure out, what's important to you and start tracking it. The second would be, that compassion piece. You don't have to be perfect. We're not 20. Just have like easy ways to attain those goals. But I'd say data.
Thank you. Jamie, um, so when it comes to career and career ambition, I'm sure many of you here, well, if not all of you, right? You have goals to achieve, like clear goals to achieve, and time to time, to achieve something big, risk taking is part of the scene. So, question for you: how do you approach risk taking in a way that feels empowering rather than overwhelming?
I think when we talk about risk, it's interesting because everyone's view of risk is different, right? Everyone's risk tolerance is it's almost very personal. And so I think there's almost like an individual risk tolerance perspective, if you will, as well as a corporate risk tolerance perspective. So it's like a very corporate answer, right? So from a business perspective, there's going to be certain behaviors and things that you can do and that you should do because that's, what's been guided, so to speak. But if we're thinking from an individual perspective, um, you can take all sorts of analogies like, you don't score the goals that you don't shoot, or whatever Wayne Gretzky said at one point in time, right? So we need to feel comfortable with taking risks. And I think sometimes, we just, I think if it's about taking risks and feeling good, we need to go back to making sure that we feel supported, so that it's not a fear of doing the wrong thing that prevents the action. We need to be chasing the right action versus avoiding what might be the wrong action. And that to me all comes back to who you work with, who are your leaders and colleagues, and are they supporting you and are they encouraging of you to take those chances and to make sure that, if you take a risk and it doesn't go the right way, that's fine, right? Like there's no punishment involved there unless you're breaking a law or something like that. But I mean, again, that goes back to the corporate piece. So as long as we feel supported, as long as we have those folks that are in our, I love the way you put it, right? The supporters. And I think the supporters goes into, advocating and saying, yeah, go ahead, take that chance. What's the worst that can happen? And as long as the worst that can happen isn't something that's again extremely terrible, do it. And then if it doesn't go the way that you expect, that's okay. Give yourself permission to not have it gone perfect or not have it go well. So I do think it comes down to both yourself and building confidence and building habits that encourage you to feel good, as well as surrounding yourself with folks that will continue to encourage you to take those chances and feel good about yourself about not getting it right every single time, because nobody does.
When we talk about risk, I always think of that fog analogy that we use when we talk about AI. Because AI is AI, right? We talk about it all the time, hear about it all the time. So I don't think it is too off topic to not mean AI. So do you mind sharing that analogy?
Sure. So I have the privilege sometimes of talking to folks around AI and helping, take the tech out of the technology, if you will, and really thinking about what it means to both our lives and businesses. And the analogy that I use often is thinking about a car driving through really, really thick fog. And if we can imagine ourselves, behind the wheel, we can't see 6 feet in front of us. It's there's all sorts of stuff that's going on, and we as the driver have decisions to make, right? Do we speed up? Do we slow down? Do we pull over? Do we phone a friend? What do we do? And I think everyone's response to that will have all sorts of different variables that come into play. Like, is it night? Is it day? Are there lots of cars on the road? Am I on a well-paved road? Is my car in good repair? How comfortable do I feel driving? Like, all of those things are all subconscious data inputs into how we kind of just subconsciously make the decision going, yeah, I'm going to slow down, but just a little bit. And someone else will be like, yeah, I feel good. I'm just going to keep going. And so what I find sometimes is when we think about technology, especially right now with AI, is that's the similar type of feeling I feel that people and businesses, the pressure of making decisions around AI. We all know that AI is really important. We all know that we should be making decisions around it. But many of us can't connect to what's the actual destination, where are we driving? We can't necessarily see 6 feet in front of us, let alone 20 feet in front of us. And so it's, you kind of have that indecision. And when you're making an indecision, you're making a conscious choice to not do something, right? And so what we aspire to do is try and lift that fog so that you can see greater than 6 feet in front of you. So that as a business, you recognize that if you're pausing, right? If you're going to pause and do nothing, let's make that an intentional choice to pause and do nothing. But hopefully we can lift that fog enough so that you feel empowered to make a decision and know what that next step's going to be.
Thank you, Jamie. Every time we have event to talk about AI and use this analogy, everyone says at the end of event that analogy really resonates with me. So I wanted to ask Jamie to share that. When I think about that analogy, I think about how everyone is different and we all have this pressure to, well, the neighbor is doing this, so I should be doing that too. Or my friend already achieved this much. Compared to that, I'm just not good enough. All that comparison that we are making, yet our life is very different from one another's, and the risk tolerance is all different. Just circumstances very, very different. So when I think I still suffer that quite a bit, the comparison, that burden. But now compared to my 20-something-year-old self, 30-something-year-old self, right now, that burden is less. Realizing that it is just different. We are just different. So yeah, if we can back to self-compassion, just give ourselves some slack. We have 12 minutes. Do we have some questions from the audience? I asked some unplanned questions and they did a good job. Please.
I was curious about, you mentioned some of the tools on the pension piece. Do you mind just articulating a little bit more on that? I find that's such an important, both pension and benefits. We're trying to tell our teams about them a little bit more. So guidance you have on that, as well as tools, just curious.
Yep. So pension models were literally just built off of like some type of like projection type scheme. And there's a lot of assumptions that have to go into that are quite invisible around, how are your earnings growing? And it's really around like the life cycle. So maybe that's the best way to explain it. And the life cycle that still exists, like, is really around, okay, I enter into the workforce, right? I start to save. Now I've got like around mid kind of career, and now I'm prioritizing retirement, and then I'm getting promoted, I'm having, children, and they go to university. You know it. We all know this. We all know this stereotypical kind of trajectory. But the reality is that is not true. Right. And so today we've talked even about situations where, we make conscious choices to take pauses, and we aren't going up that compensation, or, we aren't going, like, we're making conscious choice to stay where we are. We take absences from the workplace. We might be less risk tolerant. And so the industry has just not moved to this concept of personalization, of when if I do this one thing, right? And these are, the retirement is very, very far away. So these tools are so important to giving me like a check, right? So if I make a decision, right, and I love this analogy because these are things that, my friends are going through right now. Being a mom and a full time is really, really difficult to do. So there's a decision point where it's like, do I take a pause? Do I just kind of, prioritize this amazing time where I can be home with my kids? And then eventually there's a question on, do I give myself more time at home? Every woman with a family will go through these moments. And these are such small times in our life. Like one day our kids will grow up and they will move out, right? And they have detrimental consequences to what that retirement pot will be at the end. So what if you had a tool that you could play around with that actually showed you that, right? So if I decide to take 1 year off, what would that do to my pot at the end? If I decide to actually leave part-time, can I make it up somewhere, right? Do I have to change my job trajectory in my head as to what my goals are? And that's like, I'm even giving you like a perfect scenario of something that is not actually chaotic, or, we know that there are people out there that are making decisions on leaving jobs to get paid more because their mortgage went up. Like, these are decisions we make in a vacuum, and we make it in the moment because the tools aren't built for these zigzags that we take. So I'd love to see tools that actually allow us to actually not just model some perfect scenario, but to actually allow us to get in and actually see, what does this do to my income when I leave work? And is there a way I can make it up along the way? Or are there different decisions that I would be making along that way? Now, you're probably sitting there like, well, what can I do about that as an employer, right? And so if anyone in this room has heard about capital accumulation plan guidelines, this is guidance that the regulator puts forward that helps you to manage your retirement plan in your workplace. And these were just reissued after 10 years in 2024. And it was written right in there that you as an employer now can actually look at these tools. You can actually ask questions about the assumptions, and you should know this because you're endorsing them. And so as a fiduciary, you can demand changes for your workforce. You can say, and this happened in the health space, like it blew up. Like, remember when we were all getting the same health benefits, and then we realized with the data we needed to be personalized? This needs to happen for our financial health as well. And so as an employer, you can go in and ask as many questions as you want. This is not something that a provider controls. This is yours, and you've actually adopted it. So this is probably the call to action. Learn about your tools, learn about the assumptions, and push for the personalization. And if you're not getting it into the tool, do it through your own education campaign. And it's okay to target different demographics based on where they are, right? And really help them understand this stuff, right? So these are targeted ways which we can do. We can do it now, and then we can advocate for change, right? As we start to look over to like the UK and other areas that are much more developed, they've figured some of this out. They've figured out that looking at a retirement workplace in a vacuum is not going to work because of the personal decisions we make along the way, how these things need to come together, and they have figured out a way to personalize this. So Canada can do it too.
Thank you, Julian. And Pascal?
The most powerful tool we have in our workplaces are the actual data that we're using in the employee benefits. So when we can track trends like top 10 DINs, like what drug spend are we using? Is it changing? So for example, your demographics show average age, location, city, rural, and then what they're actually spending. So are 10% of my people on antidepressants or anxiety drugs? Like, And most of your organizations, you'll have some of those numbers. So what are you going to focus on in your workplace? You're going to focus on making sure that people have access to mental health supports. Now, what happens if you have 15% of your folks on anxiety, antidepressants, sleep disorder medications, and the average age is, 40 to 55? Then we start putting in supports around, hormonal changes as well as mental health supports. So you have a lot of power at your fingertips in terms of the data for your benefits. And you should not be looking at it in hindsight, at renewal. Oh, this is interesting. Quarterly at a minimum, and you can project out. So if you have a certain percentage, looking at mental health claims, disability cases are going to rise. And if there are trends within your organizations, you can target it through communications, programs, speakers. It's honestly, I want to say it's rocket science because, everyone would be, but it's not. Like, we all have access to that, and it's much easier than we think. So just keep an eye on what's going on. Ask for quarterly reports on top spends, and then compare it to last year, compare it to last quarter. And you can project leaves, you can project you can project profitability. Because if your claims are going up in certain, then your people aren't performing anymore, right? Like, what's the cost on presenteeism? Are people taking leaves? So really taking a step back and looking at I could go on forever on this, but I'm going to pass this on.
Thank you, Pascal. One more question, if there's a question from the audience. Many questions.
Oh, yes, there's more. Thank you.
Thank you so much to the panel, and thanks, Mihai. We talked a lot about the culture and the support that we can show up at the workplace for our people, and then even for ourselves, which is great. Can any of you speak to the hybrid workplaces that adds a layer of complexity in how an employer can show that support or that level of care and empathy when we're all sitting on screens in different provinces or even different countries across the world? I think a few folks here might relate to that as well. So just curious.
I can speak to that a little bit. What we're seeing, especially with hybrid work, so when we were all coming into offices every single day, right, and especially from a culture perspective, you could get a vibe from a company just by walking in. You could see what's on the walls, you could see what, who's hanging around the water cooler, what type of conversations are going on at lunch, and so that town square, that kind of culture feel was very present, right? And then as more and more companies, although there is some regression there to a certain extent, but as more and more companies adopt hybrid work and have adopted hybrid work, that feeling of culture becomes hard, right? And then even when you're dealing with larger organizations, that's a struggle that many feel to do even before hybrid work, because each location, each geography, each team would have their own feel, right? And a lot of that's driven by the leaders. So there are things that organizations can do, and I think part of that is really around encouraging communication and creating these spaces where you can actually digitize culture, creating places where people can communicate to each other. And that sometimes is more than just about work, right? So yes, it's about, who can I go to for help for this? And is there an expert that I can tap into that's going to be able to help me solve my problem? But it could be simple of, you know what? Again, going back to, we are who we work with, or we are who we spend time with. Maybe we want to know, we're going to have a sense of culture because we're going to find that I've got similar hobbies to some of the folks that I work with, and I want to know who that is. And if I'm sitting at home at my desk, I'm not going to be able to do that. And so making sure that there's technology in place to support that communication and support developing culture is really important, so that when people walk in, they can actually see the culture versus have to wait to feel the culture.
So I'm going to be a little more provocative and say I don't think we've figured out hybrid at all. So I have a lot of conversations about this concept, and we had another event on Tuesday, and we had some conversations on the concept of the residual. Okay, women know what that means because it happens in our workplace. Who's cleaning up after the meeting? Who's ordering the cake? Like, there's all these little tasks, and these are now also happening at home, when we're at home and we have these hybrid things, right? Who's not throwing a load of laundry in or thinking about, preparing dinner during your breaks? We are doing more. We aren't actually taking the time to use it as the tool that I believe it should be. And this is probably one of the best well-being tools that we have right now. I personally think about when I'm going to be in the office and when I'm going to be home based off of my well-being, right? Like who remembers crashing into the weekend because you're working right till 5 o'clock on Friday, and then your family gets whatever's left over, maybe Sunday morning before the Sunday scary sets in, right? Like this was my life. And now I can plan around that and I can show up better for my family. But I have to say, like, I'm totally not, I'm not allowing myself the space to just relax and to do this because I feel the pressure. So we've got to get hybrid work properly done. We've got to make sure that we stop flip-flopping and that we advocate because this benefits the people who are doing, all this residual stuff, right? This stuff adds up.
I think from the angle of supporting folks from a high, it's much harder because we can't see how people are really doing, right? So I think it's really understanding your workforce, understanding the demographic, understanding, where they looking at your claims, and then having lots of resources available, and then communicating them in a very effective way. So we all need resources differently. I might want resources online, or you might want to go and see somebody, and you might want to do a self-directed journey or do CBT, whatever it is. You need to have all of those resources available, communicated it in an effective way, and start going down to the modular level and looking at everybody as a unique individual, because at the end of the day, we all need our own resources and what's going to work for us. It's no longer one size fits all. So know the data, know your workforce. If they're at home, make sure they have tons of resources. And there's so many online tools, online resources that are delivered virtually now. It's almost difficult to choose which one you're going to. So I'd say less is more, but just picking the right resource for you and your team and making sure that you can deliver it from a remote perspective, and then communicate some more.
Thank you. Thank you so much for awesome panel, Pascal, Julian, Jamie. Thank you very much. Okay, so we are going to start our panel 2. We have Rekha from Microsoft, Eric from ProServeIT, and Sharla, my dear friend, is here with us. Thank you for being here. Quick intro, please. We'll start with that and then get into questions.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for coming out today. My name is Rekha Narang. As Mehe mentioned, I'm a Director of Technology here at Microsoft Canada, and I lead a team of cloud solution architects that work with amazing partners like ProServeIT. And I think maybe the additional bit of my intro that I want to share here today is, I'm somebody who has thought very deeply about, what we need to do and get right, kind of moving into our AI-enabled future. And I'm kind of drawing upon my training, my formal training as a systems design engineer, where we thought a lot about holistic problem solving, so taking a multidisciplinary approach to every problem we need to solve. And it's been awesome to see how that has really come to bear right now and how important it is. And events like today, where we think about, the dimension of diversity, equity, and inclusion, and bringing all voices to the table right now as we build this future is so important. So thank you for hosting today.
Thanks, Mihai. Hi, I'm Eric Sugar, President of ProServeIT, and my story is helping grow ProServeIT in the business today, creating an environment where diversity can grow and learn, and learning together with people like me who have kind of led the charge growing our diversity practices.
Hi, I'm Sharla Postic, and I am Chief Administrative Officer at Securian Canada, and we're a life and health insurer, sort of mid-sized in the Canadian market, and we focus on providing products and services to underserved markets. So it's a really natural and sort of organic link for what my passions are, and that's in leading people, empowering women, empowering people to be their best selves, bring their most authentic selves to work in a really true and very sort of operating model kind of way, not just aspirational. And we'll talk a bit more about that.
Thank you. So we'll start with a question for all three of you. What does give to gain, given that that is this year's theme for International Women's Day, give to gain mean to you personally, and how has that principle shaped your leadership journey so far?
Okay. So I love this year's theme, Give to Gain. And when I was doing an event a few weeks ago, I was thinking a lot about what this means to me. And I realized as many things, like kind of ties back to, how we were raised and our personal values. And, grew up under the influence of my amazing parents, two immigrants who didn't have a lot, came to this country with nothing and built a life of abundance and always led with generosity. So that's just a big part of my DNA. And, I have this mindset, and I would learn that from them, of abundance begets abundance. The more you give, it grows. And I think so often what we've seen is we have this scarcity mindset, like, limited jobs, limited seats at the table. And I think, the scarcity mindset really, it shrinks things. It shrinks what we can actually achieve. And when we have an abundance mindset, we can think more exponentially and things can grow. And I think right now we have to be dreaming big and thinking big. So for me, like in my leadership journey, and I just made a few notes here so I don't forget, what are the things that I give, right? So I think about my time, right? Like as a leader, before I was in a formal leadership position, even, giving your time to people when they ask for it. Like somebody comes to me and says, like, can I have a career conversation with you? I never say no. I never say no. And that does take a lot of time. And it does mean that I'm sometimes working evenings and things, but I will fit that in and, and do my best to help them. Support and encouragement, like giving away that time to offer support and encouragement. And what does that mean? Like that might sound like, okay, yeah, you just be a supportive person. It means you have to slow down. It means you got to pay attention and you got to notice small things and follow through when you notice things. So when you see somebody doing something hard or stepping out of their comfort zone, pause and say, you did a hard thing. And I'm going to embarrass Shweta for a second because I see her there. She stretched herself big time this month and went and achieved a depth certification, which was a new call to action for her. And she did it with such grace. I made sure that I stopped, we celebrated, and the rest of my leadership team did as well. So you have to take those small moments to make sure you're doing that. And if you're in a room and you notice that somebody needs support, follow up. Like, hey, did that work for you? Like, are you okay after that conversation? So again, just small but really meaningful ways that you can kind of give things away. My wisdom, I think I have some. I try to spend time offering, what I've learned so people don't make the same mistakes. Hopefully I can share some of those stories here today. And maybe the last thing I'll share is giving my people connections. People will refer to me as a people connector in life, like my life outside of work, inside of work. I'm this person, I'm like, oh my God, you get to talk to so-and-so, or I need to connect you with so-and-so. And again, that kind of goes back to that abundance, creating abundance mindset. And your network, your connections is such a form of currency. And when you give that to other people, like it really grows the impact and it can change their lives dramatically. So those are just a few things I wanted to share.
So give to gain as a theme to me was very similar to Rick. It was all around how we share ourselves, how we share our time, how we share our experiences. And one of the things I found is every time you give something away, something else appears to fill that gap or fill that void. Or every time you share knowledge with someone, you learn something when you're sharing that knowledge. And that goes from work to coaching sports to home life. All your life, when you give something away, something either shows up in return from a different spot or something shows up to fill the void of whatever you've been given away. And that void is always something new and creative and interesting.
So I think, giving the concept of giving has this connotation of like, that concept of giving away, like you're removing something from yourself and sort of now you have less. And I think if we really wrap our brains around the concept of giving as the way to reach that fulfillment or abundance, which, Reka spoke to and is such an important concept and something I really think a lot about now more than I ever did before. But, you truly do gain when you give something, because it is a privilege to be able to give something of yourself. And we each have so many beautiful, special values and skills, and there's something every single like one of us has to give. We may not even know it. I think the most special part of my career in leading people has been that in giving, I have received so much more back that I never even imagined. I didn't think it wasn't in my wheelhouse to think about. But in giving of my time, it has become just a surprise gift in my life. And one recent experience was doing a podcast with Mihai, which was like so fun. I met Mihai at a conference. We spoke for a few minutes, and she asked me to be on her podcast, and I'm like, obviously yes. And I'd never done a podcast before, but it was so special. It meant something to me to be asked to give of myself, and when I did, it felt so natural. And the response in my small circle has been so positive, and so that's just I think a simple example of how giving of myself turned into such a beautiful gift. And it does inform my leadership as a leader, as a tactical leader of people, but also as a colleague and as a connector that's been spoken of, that being able to give through connection and through the actual role that I play in the workplace also has been a tremendous surprise and a beautiful gift.
Thank you very much. Still on mic, yeah. But the trap that at least I found myself in with giving is when I'm into that too much, that I'm giving and giving and giving, and without realizing my cup is getting empty, empty, empty. Do you have experience with that, any of you, and how you managed the balance of not going zero, right, by giving? How did you manage that in both personal and professional life?
Thanks, Charla. And I also had the opportunity to be on Mihai's podcast, and I agree, it was so fun and really, really fulfilling. And I'm going to maybe talk a little bit about the story that I shared on that podcast as well. And maybe actually I'll share a little bit about myself and how I think. And I think this has helped me manage this, the question that you talk about here is, how do you achieve balance? Like, how many people actually pay attention to their self-talk? Like, are you tuned in to the voice in your head? Okay. And I mean, you don't need to raise your hand, but I just think about that. Like, I am deeply connected to and I don't think I realized this until like maybe about 7 years ago. And I'll tell you why it was about 7 years ago. And what I've realized, and, very fortunate, like my self-talk is very positive. It is very positive. Like, I think very positive, a very optimistic outlook on things. So when that starts to change, I'm like, oh, something's going on. Why does this sound negative? Something has changed. Is it time to replenish? Do I need to change something? Is there a problem out there? So like I have this inner dialogue where then because I want to get back on that path to positive self-talk. So like maybe just think about that. Like if you're not paying attention to it, like just really like when you're like on the train or you're walking or whatever, and hopefully not looking at your phone, like just think about what the voices in your head are saying to you. So I went through a period of burnout in 2018, and I want to tell the long story, but I'm going to just try to, share some of the high notes there, some of the learnings there to help people, because it can happen to anybody. It can happen to everybody. I didn't think it would ever happen to me. And I look around and I see what people are wearing, what people are carrying. I am concerned, on the pace that we're moving at. And, through that period I took 6 months off, I thought about like, okay, how can I do this differently, right? Because it can catch up with you, and it did with me, because things, and it's like, well, I can do them all individually, but the sum total, not so much. And then I got on a better path through that time. And what I realized I need to do is, I started this planning framework to help me achieve balance. And I realized it's very similar to a yoga pose. So for anybody who practices yoga and you try to do your tree pose, any of those balance poses, there's two components to that pose. There's your grounding, your stable base, and your lift. And your lift is what gets more like complicated. Like the more grounded you are, the more lift you can achieve. And then what I realized is like, actually, that's how I plan my weeks. I make sure that I have, enough grounding activities. So if I don't have that stable base, like am I exercising? Am I sleeping well? Am I eating healthy? Like, do I have time and space for that? That stable base is not going to be there. I'm going to feel out of balance. Also, if I'm doing too many things, which is all about the things that everyone else needs from me, and I don't have any lift, I'm also not going to feel balanced. So I look at my planning through that lens of where's the grounding, where's the lifting. And that has really helped me. Like, there's a bit of math that goes on there too. It's like, what are the trade-off decisions that I need to make? And, maybe just to wrap it up, like I think there's two stories I can share about like how that plays out. So in January, so the other thing I do is I always think about what my glass balls are over the month. I start every month. I'm like, what are my glass balls for the month? Work, life, like what are the things I absolutely can't drop? That is a very grounding activity for me because like I have like a 4-week kind of look ahead of what the world is expecting from me and what I expect for myself. In January, when I came back from the holidays, I'm like, ooh, this is too many glass balls. This is not good. So then I'm like, okay, I got to manage some expectations here. So I walked around and I'm like to my husband, I'm like, don't expect much of me here, here, and here because I got to do all these things. Talk to my manager. Don't ask me to do anything else. I'm like, I got to do these things and I got to do them well. Great. Thank you for sharing that with me. My business partner, I did the same thing. I managed those expectations, so that wasn't a time for me to take on anything new, right? I just wanted to do those things well. But I knew that at the beginning of the month, and there's this planning motion that it's like so critical to stay balanced. And it was great. January was awesome. Did a lot of hard things. March, I was telling Eric, I'm like, I figured out a couple of things on how to use AI a little bit more smartly. I'm getting some significant time back, in my day, which is great. When I looked at my March, I'm like, okay, this is manageable. I can take on some extra stuff. When they asked me to do this, I'm like, yes, I can do this. I've got time for it. So again, like it kind of goes back to planning and thinking about what makes you balanced as a result of going through burnout. So I had to learn it the hard way. But if you're just letting yourself get swept up and saying yes to everything, yeah, that's a recipe for burnout.
To build on what Rika was saying about glass balls and about structure and filling your cup or being overflowing, the two things that I struggle with over time, I think many people do, is the ability to say no or say not today. And they do pause and say, okay, I can help you, but it's going to be in a week, or I can help you, it's going to be here. And then also knowing who you can reprioritize. So sometimes you have to go back to someone and say, hey, we had this booked, an emergency's come up or something I need to help someone with has come up. Are you okay if we move this out? And giving yourself permission to say, I can't do this today, or this will be good enough are the two things. And then asking someone else to do something for you and knowing it won't get done your way, but it will still get done.
Yeah, I think there's nothing much more to add. I mean, these are, thank you for sharing your experience. And, those are beautiful tacticals. I think one of the things I've learned more recently in my sort of journey, as it were, is just to find joy in like small things in the day. And that was something that it was like, there's no time for joy. Like I have meeting back to back to backs and the kid needs to get to the doctor and the family needs like to eat and dinner. that one never stops, but especially with an 18-year-old boy in the house. But it's joy. And I find that by finding little joy, like maybe it's the latte that I made that I'm like, damn, girl, like this is a good latte. Or it's in a conversation, like a one-on-one with someone I really enjoy and taking like 5-10 minutes to talk about like, whatever, something interesting and sharing and connection moments, or just, connecting to yourself. What makes you feel good, because life is short, and to fill ourselves back up, it's important just to recognize moments of joy.
Thank you. Charla, we'll start with you for next question. From where you are in your career journey, what are the most important cultural shifts companies can make to build a more inclusive tomorrow? Whether drawn from your own experience in your current role, previous roles, or anything else that you heard from others, From your vantage point, what do you think?
So, it starts with, for me, it starts with, working for an organization that actually um, sees inclusivity as not just as aspirational, but truly as part of how the organization makes decisions. So, there's, for me, in my experience, what resonates and what's resonating now in the organization I'm working for is that, being inclusive and having DEI, it can't just be initiatives. And initiatives are important, and we have to have that as part of a structured focus. But it's truly in embedding inclusivity into your operating model. And so that's sort of my, coming from operations and having a deep systems mindset. It's important to actually bring things to lived experience through really practical means. And so as a leader, you have to start by role modeling, by making space. The policies that an organization have is a starting point. It's sort of foundational. It's sort of you must have these policies that are effectively around how you hire, how you retain, how you, even your attraction, bring inclusivity to life and to create a truly inclusive culture. You actually have to live that experience. As a leader, you need to make space for someone whom you may sense doesn't feel comfortable speaking up. You need to create a different way for that person in this example to be able to share their thoughts. You need to demonstrate that being authentic may mean one thing to someone and something very different to someone else, and not everyone is comfortable maybe bringing their fully authentic selves to work. So how do you recognize that and meet them where they're at? And I think, well, I more than think, I believe that making inclusivity part of a performance, culture, part of your actual performance mechanisms is critical. And I think that leaders need to be held to very specific standards around how they're building inclusive culture. It can't just be left to the DEI team or to the human experience or human resources team as an initiative. It truly needs to be embedded into the performance culture of an organization.
Thank you, Charla. Eric, as a male ally and senior leader, what motivates you to actively invest in building more inclusive workplace?
So the idea of inclusivity, and I think we've been an inclusive, diverse workplace since before that was really a politicized term. For us, day one, we started counting the languages that we spoke. We started counting the backgrounds that we served. And that was understanding that everyone's different perspective would create a better outcome for us and for our clients. So when we see something from someone else's seat or walk in their shoes, we can see those differences. And that started right from when I was a child and how I was raised, to see everyone's perspective and walk in different people's patterns, and see that in the family business that I grew up in, see that in our business. And every time we reach out and create inclusivity or diversity, I find that our business gets better and stronger. So I think it's more than just a diversity initiative, and not an HR initiative. It's a corporate strategy and a life strategy, and those two things kind of bolted together. But that's my lived experience, is that there's more power and better outcomes the more we look at problems from a different angle and different perspective. And if we narrow in on one, we miss out on everything else.
Thank you, Eric. Rekha, technology can be a powerful equalizer. How have you used technology or innovation to open doors for women and underrepresented talent?
Yeah, I think there's kind of two things I wanted to share here. First, like if we take the technology angle, I think, I'm sure all of us are using some form of generative AI, Copilot or ChatGPT, and I think the ability for it to synthesize complex kind of was clear to all of us out of the gate. And, that's when I had this aha moment. As a leader of technical people, I've been leading technical people my entire career. Even before I was in a formal leadership position, I was doing delivery management for a complex project. So always like kind of, leading technical people. And, there's a detail orientation there that, we often, it's our strength and it's our weakness, right? And what I've started to hear a lot of over the years is, oh, we don't want to bring so and so into the room because they're just too detailed, they're too technical, or like it's too complicated to hear them. And this has always bothered me, right? So this concept of what does executive presence actually mean, and whose ideas are actually influencing outcomes, and spending time with, brilliant people who are, very detail-oriented, often like, neurodiverse, introverted, their ideas weren't really taking any foothold. And I'm like, this can help us, right? And so how I was coaching people was different, right? Like I'm like, I don't have to now like put in a lot of hard work to coach you to synthesize your ideas. Like, let's figure out how we use this tool to take this and bring this to prime time. And I've seen like lots of wonderful examples of where people now are influencing in different arenas because of how we're using technology. And I want to be actively coaching for that all the time and using it for myself too. So that was on the kind of more on the technology angle. The other thing I want to talk about is the hiring process. And so innovation just means trying something new, right? Like, we innovate with technology. Technology is a real catalyst for innovation, but innovation is really just having the mindset of trying something new. So more than ever, we all need to adopt this mindset. So I think about the hiring process, right? Just to kind of get to the heart of what your question is. And about, I think it was maybe 7 years ago now, myself and my manager at the time, Betty Rieger, we were looking at the current state of our 35 people organization, all technical resources, and you can imagine what the gender representation was in that team. We weren't involved in hiring a lot of them, so we were just kind of taking stock of our team and saying, what could we do to make a difference here? How do we bring more female talent into this team? And so we had to look at the process through an innovative lens and not changing the Microsoft hiring process, but just thinking as hiring managers, where do we have levers that we can pull? So we kind of looked at 3 different steps. Like one is, at the very beginning, like the net you're casting, right? How do we change that? The second is how you're bringing people into the process. And the third is, how are we interviewing people? And so we looked at each step and said, okay, casting the net, we know our job descriptions are intimidating, right? And we got that direct feedback from a lot of women on, I can't apply for a job at Microsoft. Like I'm not qualified. And so, we've all seen the study, a man will apply for a job if he meets 50% of the requirements, and a woman needs to meet 150% of the requirements to apply for the job. So what I just thought, I'm like, what if I, as a hiring manager, just kind of say, hey, here's the job description, but don't self-select out if you don't meet all the job requirements. Still apply if you meet some of them and you're interested in growing into these dimensions. And my recruiter was able to tell me, she's like, this is the most diverse set of candidates that we've gotten for a technical role. Simple thing, right? So that's innovation, right? Small thing, but just trying something new. On the second side, like taking a screen-in approach, right? So it's like when we hire, it's like, oh, I got to backfill for the person that just left. Like that person was like so deep on Azure, knew all the things, all the platform, like had all the technical details, could answer any question. I got to go hire for that. Do you? Especially like, the changes were coming. I knew we had to rethink, the profile of the people that we're hiring. So when we're hiring for an Azure architect, we ended up hiring somebody who had deep industry experience, strong technical aptitude, strong, capabilities, 0 Azure experience, 0, into an Azure architect role. Person that you guys have given me amazing feedback about. She went on to become like our top Azure AI architect on my team. And so like, again, like we have to rethink, like what are we actually looking for? And this has been more true than it was 5 years ago when we made these decisions. And then the third piece is innovating with your interview process. So we just said, like, let's give people the questions in advance. Let's take the fear off the table. Let's people come and be their best, right? And that the feedback we got from candidates is like, this really allowed me to show up as my best. What I experienced as a hiring manager is I got to see how people prepare. We overvalue, like, I got to see how someone thinks on their feet. Really? I want to see how people prepare. Like Jamie the other day, he's like, you sent 2 architects. They were so prepared. And it's like, yeah, we kind of quiz them on that in the interview process, right? Like that's a very, very valuable skill. And that's really leveled the playing field through that process. So those are the 3 things we tried. I think we doubled the amount of females on the team over 4 years. You know, it's not easy to turn these big ships, but change did happen. And I think we saw, like, percentage wise, it was like almost a 40% increase. So innovate with your process.
Thank you very much. Inspiring, right? Last panel, we didn't really have enough time to take questions from the audience, so I will stop asking myself and turn table to audience. Maybe start with the virtual audience. If anyone who joined virtually have any questions, please type them in and we will get to them. In the meantime, yes, I will come to you.
Hi there. Thanks for this and the other panel. It was very interesting and worthwhile. I'm Lisa. I'm from Community Living Ontario. Just wondering about, one of you hit on neurodiversity or just people who think differently. Can any of you elaborate on maybe some adjustments you've made in your thinking or your hiring practices in regards to neurodiversity?
Maybe I'll just share a couple of things and I'll pass it over to Eric. I think that what I just shared about the interview process, like sharing questions in advance, I think that can be a great equalizer. But what we've done as a team on neurodiversity is we've leaned into learning, right? And I've done a lot of exercises with my team, just to not to like get anyone to disclose things that they don't want to disclose. But I just think, like, the more we embrace understanding that people think differently, and we all do, it creates that empathy we need just to show up as better humans, better teammates, all the things. So, we've done some really interesting exercises and some very pointed learning so that we're all kind of understanding that conceptually that this exists. And when you're interacting with somebody, this might be part of what you're dealing with on both sides, right? So just building that awareness and making it comfortable for people to have that discussion at work, and also celebrating those differences too, right? I think what we don't do enough of is celebrating the superpowers that come with neurodivergence and how that can really help. So I like to tell those stories whenever I can.
So some of the testing we do during the hiring and onboarding process can identify certain types of neurodiversity, not all. And so we can actually help understand which jobs they'd be more successful in, and then help coach people into those roles based on how they learn, how they process information, and they're combine that with a personality profile. You can then double click on that and say, okay, based on the learning profile, the data processing profile, these are things that we may need to help them more with and coach them more on. And these are things that we want to have them coach us on because they'll have way better experience than us. So it's, if you kind of integrate it right through from the interview process into the DNA of your culture, really great way to be successful with neurodiverse people in your business.
Yeah, I'll just add from a sort of going forward perspective with AI, we started to talk about how do we utilize AI to help leaders hiring and sort of retaining great talent to understand how to behave differently. So using AI to train our own people to consider different perspectives. And then beyond that, sometimes it is a matter of having more than one person speak with candidates. So, our leaders will sometimes just someone from a completely different department will spend half an hour with the candidate just to kind of give the candidate an opportunity to be more at ease with a different personality. And sometimes, really, truly kind of magical moments can come from that, where you're recognizing how someone processes information and may show up very differently based on the chemistry between people.
Thank you. Another question? We didn't get to some of the questions last time too, so yes.
Hello, this is Radhima coming from Definity Insurance. How do we move or shift our vision from giving back to investing in future?
And processing. So giving back. So I think that I'll look at that from a community perspective. So, in organization, like missions of an organization will have to varying degrees, generally have some sort of a giving back perspective. In my organization, a big part of our target market are underserved individuals. So people who don't have access to insurance via their employment, gig economy workers, newcomers to Canada. So we spend a lot of time, investing in understanding the needs of that market, so that we can give. But what we receive back in terms of investing into ourselves, so that cyclically we can then reinvest back into the community. And I really think of it as a system. I think, one of the things we've done is use data, which came up a lot in the first panel, but using data from folks that we service to understand, like from communities, from market sectors, to understand how to innovate in our product space and in our delivery model, so that we're actually keeping pace with change and change of the community. And obviously our sort of global community is becoming so entwined that it's important to sort of understand from a broader perspective how you give, how it's received, and what data comes back to you. So perhaps that touches on it to some degree.
So I'll say from our experience or from my perspective, we treat them as two different items. So we have our give back things. We're a certified B Corp. So our give back where we donate money to and raise money for cancer every year for women's cancer research. We have other things we're giving back into. So there's a giving motion on one side, and the investing is more investing in our culture, investing in diversity, and investing there is how we're going to grow our business of the future. So the one thing is, how do we do good with kind of our abilities and what we can do? And then how do we invest to create a better us? So this is how we break those two apart.
I would like to understand more about your question, actually. Like, is there a specific scenario that you were thinking about where those two things live in tension?
Basically, giving back has always been like a community norm. Like, if I get into a privileged class that I can now go back and give,
Got it.
that's giving back. But investing in the future is now building up that society, which probably we don't have to talk tomorrow about giving back. It's about people, you're bringing them to that kind of a stage where they are self-sufficed, or at least can at a stage.
And maybe I'm having a hard time teasing of that apart in my brain. Maybe it's because, like, when I think about when I choose to give, I'm giving with the sense of I'm making an investment in the future, right? So I think about some of the work that I've done through my Microsoft affiliation with companies like Empower, right? So they're a nonprofit organization, and they are investing in the job talent of the future. So there is definitely an element of giving back there, but that's building for the future, right? So I think when you have that mindset of it's giving back for the intention of creating, a future where we're kind of living more harmoniously and more together, like that, those two things are just deeply coupled in my mind. So, and maybe this isn't an example that, really answers your question, but I think it's an important distinction. Like, I think a lot of when we think about hiring and we think about, where we maybe in some places have, this perception of diversity quotas needing to be met, it feels like an act of charity, right? And it quite truly is not. And I think there's a mindset when I always say to people, like, well, they're like, oh, I'm going to take a bet on somebody. I'm like, are you going to take a bet on them, or are you going to choose to invest in them? Because you're taking a bet on something, you're waiting to see what happens and how it plays out. When you have an investment mindset, you are going to make that work, right? So again, I don't sure if that answers your question, but that's just what came to mind when I asked it.
Thank you so much, Shala, Eric, Reka. I think there was question from the virtual audience. Okay, so the agenda, if we strictly follow that, we're going to have keynote right away. But do you smell the food? I think we're hungry, eh? Yeah. So why don't we grab food and come back and sit and then invite our keynote? Keynote, Krista is there. After, if she can, adjust schedule a little bit, so we go a little bit longer, she's good. So do we want food? Okay, let's do it. So 10 minutes, 11:55, if we can all sit it, and Krista will be here. Krista is a professional arborist working full-time as a climbing arborist for the city of Mississauga, part-time lead climbing instructor at Humboldt College and the Women's Tree Climbing Workshop, ambassador for Husqvarna chainsaws and notch climbing equipment, and on the side, just happens to also climb comparatively and is your current North American and Ontario female tree climbing champion and former world tree climbing champion. She's been way too humble here in this file. I got introduced to Krista through my husband. My husband works quite closely with arborists. Through that, I know how tight community arborists are and how much they want to do good for community and environment. And I heard so many good things about Krista's work and how much she gives back to community. So really honored to have you, Krista, as our keynote speaker. Thank you so very much for agreeing to be here. Thank you.
Pictures, Grace. You don't have to stare at me. Testing. Oh, yeah, there we go. Thanks. Cool. All right. Thank you for the introduction. Hi, everyone. How's lunch? Did you save me something? Vegetarian ones, probably. Yeah, so intro. My name's Krista. I live in Hamilton, Ontario, and I work full-time with the city of Mississauga. Any Mississauga peeps? All right, you're welcome for taking care of your trees and keeping your streets clear of fallen trees. That's my full-time job. I've been working there 12 years, and then I worked in the private sector for almost 8 years. So yeah, I'm going on 18, 19 years as an arborist. It's been very exciting. For those of you who don't know what an arborist is, we basically take care and maintain individual trees. So foresters take care of an accumulation of trees, say like someone's, like if they have acres of land or woodlots and things like that, we maintain individual trees. So day to day, I would be going out pruning trees, city-owned trees when I work for the city. Sometimes I work on the side too, so you'd call me up and I'll come into your backyard and, clear your tree over your pool because you want some more sunlight, get a better tan, things like that. Anyone here ever hired an arborist before? Right on, right on. Were they insured? We're a little bit of an unregulated industry, unfortunately, still. But myself and a lot of my colleagues, as you were saying, that it's a pretty tight-knit, small community. A lot of people don't even realize that this is a job. I get paid to climb trees, hanging in ropes and wielding chainsaws, which is kind of crazy, but it is a professional job and industry. But we're all trying to work towards making it a lot more professional, because as it stands right now, any of you right now, after this inspiring talk, could go to Home Depot and grab a chainsaw off the shelf and start cutting trees, which is crazy to me. Just watch some YouTube videos and you'll see why it's crazy. That's me, obviously. Those are my two nieces. I was just in Australia. My sister unfortunately moved there with the family, but luckily I had won my competition here last year and advanced to the Worlds, and it happened to be in New Zealand. So I was climbing trees competitively against men and women from the planet, all the way down in New Zealand, and it was super, super cool. So yeah, this job has taken me all over the place, including this 44th floor. Anyone else's ears pop in the elevator? It's like a rocket ship. But I'm not afraid of heights, obviously. Don't come over here if you are. It's right at the edge. But yeah, these are my two nieces, and I took some climbing gear and had them climbing. I built them a zip line, and we just played around and had some fun. But yeah, this whole talk, I kind of based it more around empowerment, right? That's why you're all here, right? And as women, I see some men in the group too. This is not going to be a man-hating session. I love men. I work almost entirely with men, a lot of good men. But yeah, our industry is incredibly male dominated, mostly because of the physicality that the job entails. But also, I think in the past, it's getting better, but I think women just didn't think they had a place there. It's pretty intimidating, all the equipment and the hard work, and then entering it is pretty low cost, but you very quickly can feel at a place. So I am constantly trying to help and change that, because these are the teams I work on. Far left, that's City of Mississauga and our sweet outfits. That's not what we normally wear. Those are for events. But that's my team. Some of them, we have 19 arborists, and right now only 3 of them are females, 2 of which are very competent. One is in training as my apprentice. She's on my crew. And these 4 here, these are all my supervisors. Eventually I'm going to be one of them, but I don't want to work in an office yet. I want to keep doing this, working outside. I love being outside. Even in the winter, it was a very cold, snowy winter, but we still climb trees in the snow and in the ice and in the storms. So top right, I sit on a team, and this is how I know your husband. I work with Husqvarna chainsaws, and I'm on a team that helps product test and develop chainsaws to suit our needs. So it's pretty cool. I've been very fortunate to be on that team, personally, but also just as kind of an ambassador in our industry to have a voice between the users and the manufacturers. So I work directly with the engineers and tell them, you should make this way, or, it's a little bit top heavy. Could you balance it out a little bit more? That kind of thing. Make an attachment point a little more accessible so I can clip it to my harness. Stuff that they might not necessarily think about. And again, I'm the only female on the North American H team, it's called. And then same with Notch. I work doing the same thing with climbing equipment, developing gear that makes our job safer, more efficient, and generally just more enjoyable. So they'll ask me things like, oh, should we put a swivel on this? Would you like it to swivel? No. I don't want it swiveling. It needs to stay right where it is. Or that rope, I love that rope, but it's like not very nautable. Is there any way you can make it like 24 strand instead of 32 strand? That kind of thing. And then this is global H team. So these men that I'm working with here, they're New Zealand, Sweden, and Germany. So I get to work with men and women all over the world doing all the things that we love. And never a day goes by that I'm not feeling like I'm #blessed. So I started my career kind of like everyone's going to have a little bit of a different story. That's with any industry, I think, but especially with ours, you'll be like, how did you get into this? It's one of the number one questions I get. I've always thought to make a bingo card at work for all the things that the residents say. How'd you get your rope up there? Can you climb in the winter? Can you chip my brush? But yeah, one of the things is, how did you get into the industry? And my story is a little bit strange. My friend married an arborist, and it just went right over my head. I didn't even think to ask what that was, but I was in the wedding party, and his boss and I got to know each other and was setting up the stag and does and all this kind of stuff. He said, hey, and I was landscaping at the time. I had taken the horticulture program at Humber, but completely bypassed their arboriculture program. So we're chatting, and he says, you should come work for me. I was like, why would I do that? I have a job. And they sent me to school and everything. And he said, well, I want to get you into tree climbing competitions. And I was like, what? First, what is that? And 2, why me? And he said, well, you look a lot like the women that compete at these higher levels. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna think on it. I obviously didn't say yes right off the bat. But I thought to myself, I'm like, is this going to be like an insult? What do these women look like? So I Googled it. I Googled tree climbing competitions, and then literally my life changed at that point, because naturally I'm a competitive person. I play hockey, softball, anything, cards. If I can beat you at it, I'll try to do it, like nicely, but I will beat you. So I looked at it, and sure enough, the women, not all of them, obviously, but a lot of them looked like we could be sisters. I was like, maybe this guy is onto something. And at that point in my horticulture career, I was thinking, okay, I really like making nice lines on the grass, right? Like a golf course. But other than that, all of it was getting a little bit boring, and I didn't really know. I didn't know if I wanted to get into management, maybe landscape design. I thought about that, but I'm not super artistic. So I kind of thought, okay, maybe this is a good career shift change. Maybe I'll give it a whirl. I also thought about going into either firefighting or policing, because I just wanted to do something a little more exciting. But I thought, okay, I'll come work for you for the summer, and then maybe I'll apply to the police academy or something like that. And within my first week, he had me up a tree. And I was hooked, and I was decent at it, right? Not really sure why, but I like that competitiveness. You teach me how to do something, I want to learn how to do it better. I want to learn how to do it safer. And then I want to help someone else learn how to do it too and share it, right? So I got hooked. My boss sent me to school, and I took the horticulture apprenticeship program 3 months in the winter, and then 3 months again the next winter. So 2 years, but only really 3 months in class. And while I was there, I was talking to my fellow students, and I said, oh, this is so cool, eh? Learn how to climb and everything. I'm like, I really hope I can do things better and safer. And then all my friends are like, yeah, I really want to do this course so I can prove to my boss that I can climb and have him let me climb. I was like, you guys aren't climbing? Nope. So I found myself in a kind of a unique situation that the boss that hired me saw something in me different than how it normally works. Usually you kind of work your way up, drag and brush, and proving yourself before you get to climb, right? Not my case. So that unique situation when I was at school, I was kind of surrounded by my peers that didn't know anything, but I did. So when it came to testing, I would just rip up there, do my test, get it done, and then I'd pull people aside and teach them and help them and encourage them to get up there and try it and try different things. And they noticed that, and they said, you know, when you're done school, we'd like you to come back, and we want you to be a technician and help the students, because clearly you have kind of like a knack for it. Sweet, cool. I didn't do it for that purpose, but them allowing me to do it definitely like empowered me to use my skills, even though it was very minimal, to share everything I knew. And then since then, it's just been an uphill climb, pun intended. Yeah, so I was a technician at Humber College for 6 years, and then opportunity came up to become a lead instructor. First female lead instructor for the climbing program at Humber ever, which is cool. Yeah, women. Yeah, and it's been great. I've been a lead there now. I just finished my 9th year. Yes.
You still know my dad?
I do. You know, I have to avoid your dad when I go into the store because he talks to me for like half an hour. The next time I see him, I'll make sure I make some time for him. So yeah, I've been teaching there, and I absolutely love it. It's a nice way to break up the winter because it can be long and boring and cold. But we're outside pretty much 90% of this class, climbing behind Humber College North near Woodbine Racetrack. They have an arboretum in the back, and I know every tree back there like the back of my hand. Climbed them all. And that has been such a cool experience. But every year, probably 90 to 95% of my students are male. Kind of makes sense. Our industry is very male dominated, but when I do get some females in the class, little experiment that I didn't mean to do but happened after COVID was we had to teach in cohort, right? 2021, we weren't allowed the students to all mingle. We had to split them into little groups. And my co-lead and I, we usually teach side by side. His name is Matt. We're like yin and yang, mom and dad. We're a really, really good team working together, but we had to split. And we've never had that before. And I said, I don't have any stipulations to how this split goes, except I think it might be a good decision to put any of the females we have in my groups in case there's any female related issues that need to be treated with a bit of sensitivity. It might make more sense to have me in that role. So we did. I had a fantastic year. I had 30 students, 3 groups of 10. 2 of my technicians were female and 1 was male. And it's still to this day my favorite year. And I almost didn't do it because like COVID schmovid, I hated it. We had to wear masks outside in a golf course. It sucked. But the group itself was amazing. They did so good. Matt, on the other hand, nothing against him, but he had a horrible time. It was his least favorite year out of all the years we've been doing this. And the only thing and this is just a theory, but the only thing I can think of was all of my groups had at least 2 females in each group and female instructors. His were all male and he could not organize them. They weren't showing up to class. So maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they had different weather on that side of the golf course. Maybe their trees were worse. But I still think, and I'm confident in my theory, that women really take up a really important, valid space in our industry, whether that's hands-on in the trees, climbing, pruning, removing, or in the plant healthcare sector, dealing with pests and diseases and determining what your tree needs, making a plan, planting. There's a lot of divisions in our industry. You don't have to climb. But women tend to be pushed / lean towards more of the plant healthcare side and not the physical hands-on chopping trees side. But that is changing. And one of the big things, I made this presentation, but I don't think I'm following it. A big thing is having places for them to either see themselves becoming or to be able to tap into to help get that motivation and inspiration and to be empowered and then take it back to work, right? We can't all be, as blessed to work with another female that can inspire you every day. So sometimes you need to source it out somewhere else. Might just be following someone on Instagram and being inspired from someone across the world that's doing the same thing as you and crushing it. And I have had that experience. People come up to me and be like, "Oh, can I get a selfie with you? I've been following you for years. You're so inspiring." I'm like, I'm out here working. Like, that's amazing. And I started catching on that, I might be reaching and inspiring a lot more people than I think, right? Either word of mouth or Instagram. But I've been very blessed to be a part of this organization. My sweater is from them. I'm an instructor there. It's all in the US. I'm trying to get them to come up to Canada and do one here, which would be really cool. But it's the Women's Tree Climbing Workshop. And I have learned a ton doing this. I can teach, I can show, I can test, I can evaluate people. But I've never been in an environment that was all women, female instructors, female attendees. And this course is 2.5 days long. And it's usually at like a camp or a university. And we eat, sleep, climb day and night. Well, we don't climb at night, but we hang out at night, have fires and talk girl stuff. But what was super interesting about taking this for the first time that really shocked me and kind of changed my, approach, my perspective on being a female in a male-dominated field. I always thought it was the men. I thought We need to teach the men to be better than the women and give them more opportunities and see them for what they're worth and empower them, give them the chance to climb that tree, give them the chance to run that crew, let them fell that tree. But that's, in my opinion, from what I've experienced, is not the case. You guys want them to do that. I've worked with a lot of men that are very encouraging. It's us. I saw in this group, the women in these groups in an all-female environment compared to women in a mixed environment, there's something about us, and I'm speaking generally, but there's something about us that is very nurturing and selfless that ends up actually kind of keeping us from making that next step or taking that opportunity. And I always see women say, oh, no, go ahead, you try it, and then I'll do it, right? And maybe that's the motherliness in them, I'm not sure, but they're always just trying to be polite and respectful and take their turn. But when I came into this environment, it was just women. It was like opposite. Women were like, can I do that? I want to go next. Okay, calm down. Yeah, you can go. Okay, and then you do that. And it was just like a mind-blowing experience to see women helping women, and there was no struggle. There was no hierarchy. It was just, oh, you wanted it? Okay, I'm going to do it first, and then I'll jump on your rope after you jump on mine. Okay, cool. And there was no ego. It was just natural and very inclusive and inspiring to me to see that environment. And from that point on, I realized we need to empower women, not convince men we know what we're doing, right? And that's how I lead now. And it's the same for when I teach men, because that's mostly who I teach and mostly who I end up working with. Yeah, I don't, step on them and say, no, I'm doing this. I'm a woman, I could do it. I just have like a full-on discussion with my crew. I say, okay, we got to prune this tree. Does anyone want to do it? And if no one's kind of jumping, I'll be like, okay, I'm going to do it, but watch what I'm doing. And when I'm doing it, ask me questions about what I'm doing and why. And then I'm constantly teaching them and showing them. But then at the end, we walk away from the job, whether they say it or not. They're probably just like, man, she's badass. That was awesome. She did that in just 1 hour. So yes, I have to constantly prove myself. Even as a past world champion, that is a nice platform to start on. It gives me a lot of respect when I enter a room, but it took me a lot of work to get there, and I'm not done, right? I got to continue, and I got to continue to share. One other big thing that I learned at the workshop was they say when we start the workshop, we say, we want you to come into this with intention, not expectation. And that's been really, really key. And I've taken that and used it in everything I do. I had no expectations for this. I had no idea what I was doing, what floor. I don't know Toronto very well. But my intention was tell my story. Maybe one of you, I can give you some information about who you should be getting to prune your trees this summer. I know some of you are thinking it. But yeah, I always go into everything with intention and with the hopes that I can inspire someone or inspire someone's child or inspire someone's friend that that maybe isn't doing very well in school, but is pretty competent and active and fit. This might be a perfect job for them. I sucked at school. I just barely passed everything. I got to school and I was top of my class. So finding your purpose and your path is really big. The other big thing was if someone is trying to do something and they're struggling, a lot of us, and again, sorry men, but a lot of us, I find the men tend to want to help. They want to help, right? And they think they're helping. And if say they're tying a knot and they're tying it incorrectly, they'll go up and just say, oh yeah, do it like this, and pull it out of her hand. Yeah, see, look, see, that's how you do it. I'm a good helper. And then I've seen it. I've visually seen it. And the woman just looks a bit defeated, a bit, like, I don't know. They lose all their desire and they don't feel very encouraged, right? And then I usually see them put it down and do something else because they just feel absolutely defeated. So what we do, and we tell all of our instructors this, hey, are you struggling with that knot? What are you tying there? Oh, I love that knot. Can I see what you're, okay. The tail, you're going around this way. If you try going around this way, that will finish it perfectly. And then they do it. And then it's like, and then I walk away. And then they're retying it again on their own because I've just empowered them. They did it. I didn't touch. I'm standing here just helping you. I'm just supporting you. Now, if they do need help and they're just like really messing up, I ask for permission. I say, can I show you? And then you give it to me. That way you have power in me helping you. And it's two-way. Yeah? And that could be applied in anything, I think, right? So that has been super, super helpful. I use that at school as well. What was I going to talk about next? Oh yeah, tree climbing. Okay, this is me competing everywhere. And it's really hard to pick pictures just for this. You should just go to my Instagram and look at it. But that to me, when I first started competing, I didn't work with any other women. I had no women at the company at all. I just heard about them. I don't even think Instagram existed. I think I had Facebook. I saw a little bit of stuff on Facebook. But when I showed up to my very first competition in 2010 in Chicago, I saw these women from around the world. A lot of them looked like me. I felt very included. And then when I saw them climb, I was like, holy moly. I want to do that. I want to be that good. And they inspired me without even talking to me. Just visually seeing them, just them being there and being so confident. And so, I don't know, you could just tell they knew where they were supposed to be. And flip full circle, it's been crazy. Now I'm that person. Who would have thought? I would have had no idea that that's how my life would have turned out. But having the opportunity to travel the world, be inspired by other women and men, and then being able to use all of the things that I've learned while competing and applying it to my work. Now at the city of Mississauga, I started there almost 13 years ago, and they were climbing on some real old, in my opinion, junk. Right? So slowly but surely, I kind of started implementing some new stuff and getting them all up to speed. Now I'm the one writing SOPs for what we want to be using. And I've proven myself working there long enough that they trust me. They've given me the authority to do it. And just yesterday, I was part of a talk with the OCAA, the Ontario College of Arborists Association. And we did a talk on how I did that. How was I able to create that SOP and bring in all of that new gear to a massive municipality? Mind you, we're not unionized, so that's really nice. I don't have to jump through a ton of hoops. But what was so cool about that yesterday, there were 40 people. 2 of them were women. 4 of us on the panel. I was the only woman, and I was leading it. Right? And then I took everything that we were teaching, and I gave them my email. I said, if you need any help, if you need any paperwork, you want examples, I'll send it to you. I've already gotten like 10 emails since yesterday about sharing and developing programs because I care. I care that other people want to do things better, safer, and more professionally. I'm an open book. I'll tell you all my tips and tricks as long as it raises that bar of our industry as a whole together. Not in a competitive way, but in an encouraging way. Woo-hoo. Yeah. Okay. I'm not doing the time. I think I'm over. I got like a couple more words, and then I'll take my lunch. All right. Yeah. So just a couple things. Obviously, be bold, brave, and confident. Also, know what you know and know what you don't know, and have the courage to say so. Have the courage to say, yeah, I'll do that. I'm good at that. Yes, thank you. I'll do it. I'll do it even better than you thought I would. Or I don't know how to do that. Can I take a course? Can you send me to this? Can I get that book and read it and learn? But let me. But be courageous in telling them that you don't know how to. It's not a weakness. It's a weakness if you're not willing to then pursue it and learn, right? Celebrate your successes. Aside from this intro, I am not very good at telling people that I'm really good at this. Right? My intros are usually like, hey, I'm a climber. My name is Krista. And so I was like, and? Yeah, so celebrate your successes. I'm working on that. So I think you all can too. Be proud of what you've done, share it with the world, and encourage others to do that too. Yeah. And yeah, know what you know what you don't know. And then always remember, sorry, gentlemen. It's you or us, not you or I. We're in this together, yeah? No, that's a very, I needed a lot more time than this. I could have way deeper into things, but half an hour is half an hour. And I'll be sticking around. I'm gonna see what is left over for lunch. But if you genuinely have any questions, even if it is tree related, gonna be wanting, I got this tree, it's got this thing on it. I'll just be lingering around. I'm the tall one dressed a lot less nice than all of you. Fish out of water up here. But thank you.
Awesome or what? Oh my. We have questions for Krista, tree related or what?
Thank you. So you spoke earlier about how women generally do not put themselves out there, especially in the presence of males in a room. And it's something that really resonated with me, and I'll tell you where it's coming from. So I coach youth volleyball, and they're 14-year-old girls. I've been coaching them for quite a few years now. And it's very interesting, and I wanted to comment on this, if you have an idea of maybe where that comes from. Because in adulthood, I can understand there's societal pressures, there is a lot of stereotypes around motherhood, the nurturing piece, and so on and so on. But I've observed very similar behaviors in very young women. And I'm just curious if you have any thoughts on this, of why that may be. And me as a male, and I'm the only male in the room very often because all of my assistant coaches are female, how can I support them so that way the future generation of women that get into the workforce, into post-secondary education, do not have to deal with these preconceived notions and enable them to be more successful as such?
I can speak for all of us here.
The rest.
To us. Yeah, no, that's a good point. That 14-year-old Thank you. Wouldn't have motherly instincts. They don't have kids. I don't have kids, but I have motherly instincts. And I think it's that word. It's our instinct. Just like I've seen men, their instinct is to be really strong physically. Don't talk about their emotions. Don't tell me there's something wrong. Just put your head down and work. So I think both genders have things to work on, and they can both help each other from both sides. Like the men I work with, I ask them, hey, how you doing? Do you go to therapy? Like I'll do that, but I'll say, I just started going to therapy and it has been awesome. You know, I didn't really think I needed it. So I just tell them my story in hopes that they would be like, maybe I should do that too. And just talk about it like it's just a normal thing. We can talk about these things. I even talk about the things in front of my coworkers that I don't think they want to hear. Like, Man, I got such bad cramps. I got some tampons at lunch. Because like women think that men don't want to hear that, and men don't want to hear it. But why? We all know what's happening. Let's just talk. Let's just make it normal, right? So for your 14-year-old girls, I say keep encouraging them, but maybe the knot tying example that I gave you, maybe reflect a little bit on how you are coaching them. Maybe you're doing everything right, but maybe there's some things you could do. Don't take the ball out of their hand and show them the serve. Ask them to show you. Empower them to build themselves up and get a little bit more, I don't know, confidence, right? That's a hard one. Does anyone have anything to share with that? Any other coaches in here? It's amazing. I always thought doing more work so other people don't have to is helpful. They're going to want to work with me because I do everything. They don't have to do as much. I learned very quickly it's quite opposite. Give someone a task and let them do it. Even if that means you get to kick back and relax a little bit, it lights them on fire, right? So just keep lighting them on fire. Yeah? Anyone else?
Thank you for the question, and thank you, Krista. Any more questions?
Thank you so much for sharing your story. Are you able to share a little bit about how your family reacted to, your choices of career path? Were you supported? Were you not supported? I'm really keen to hear.
No, they were super supportive. Yeah, I climbed trees as a kid all the time. I actually fell out of a tree when I was a kid, sent in an ambulance to the hospital, and it still didn't faze them. They thought it was cool, and I think they probably saw in me that I was being very, I don't know, it just woke me up, and I knew I had found my path. And now, at any party, it's like I'm the one people want to talk to because they want to know about what I'm doing. Where have I been? Where'd you go? I was just in Michigan last week doing a talk on chainsaw safety to a bunch of landscapers, and it was awesome. And I ran out of time, and I had 2.5 hours. It wasn't even hands-on. It wasn't a workshop. They were just sitting like you, just watching me talk.
Then just a quick follow-up question then. What advice would you give to, kind of young women who have a dream or a passion that, maybe they're not getting that family support?
Find a mentor.
Right.
Yeah. Even if that mentor doesn't know you exist, could be someone they follow on Instagram, an athlete, or someone doing something in the field they want to get into. And then let them know, like, don't be afraid to reach out. I never want, my biggest fear is that I intimidate people. Yeah. I didn't even mention in my talk that I'm one of the founders of WAO, Women in Arboriculture Ontario. And we started it because I knew there were women and female climbers going through my program at Humber, but then I'd go to the Ontario tree climbing competition and they weren't there. It's like, this isn't making any sense. So we started WAO, and we run one day a year called Tree Fest. It's coming up June 20th. If you want to come, you can register. It's free. You come climb trees with us, for real. And we encourage women to network, and we put an emphasis on the day to competing. And we set up little mini events, and then I'm there, and they meet me, and they find out I'm a huge nerd and a goofball. And we get to chat and talk, and I share ideas with them. And then they get to climb in an environment where they're not being judged or scored or timed. This year will be our 11th year. The last 10 years, we've had 10 women competing, which is the max that we're allowed to have. And we're the only chapter in the world that has that. So it worked. You build it, they will come. That's literally what we did. We're like, we know you're out there. We're going to build you something and come meet us. And it's just absolutely taken off. So June 20th, Tottenham Conservation Area. There's camping. Men are allowed to. It's for the women. and just come literally hang out. Bring your kids. We have a kids climb. It's a good time.
Thank you.
That's free. There's lunch and t-shirts.
Maybe just one more question.
I will be in the hallway, so if you're shy to ask, be brave. Find me in the hallway. Yes.
A tree question.
Sure. Break the ice so everyone else can follow.
All right, I live in Mississauga, and I have a beautiful maple in the back. And towards the end of the summer, I get black spots on all the leaves. They all fall off. I think, well, maybe next year it won't do that. But every year it does. But it's a beautiful, healthy tree.
And it'll continue to be.
Yeah?
It's called black spot.
It's okay.
No, it's like a very original name. We got together and like, what should we call this black spot? Yeah, it's called black spot. That's probably a Norway maple.
I don't know. No, it's not a red maple, but
Mm.
and well, it's fine. It
It's
doesn't hurt
fine.
the
It's
tree.
just gonna look like that forever.
What causes it?
I'm not entirely sure. I'm not
Very
super good at the
prevalent in Mississauga.
Yeah, oh yeah, everywhere. Now that you know about it, take a look around. You'll probably spot it more. You'll black spot it more. Yeah, but it's not gonna kill your tree. Yeah. Cool. Y'all have more questions. Like, no, I see the.
Here we are.
No, I rewrote the curriculum for Humber last year, and then found out my coworker did all of his share on AI, and I did mine like old school. I might as well have gotten a typewriter out. I was just like, my hand, my brain, and then I found out he did his whole half AI. I was like, I feel good about how I did mine. My brain.
Something for you and I to chat about.
Yeah. There you go.
One more block.
Thanks for having me. Thank you very much. Well, that's it the rest of your day. You have more talks after this and stuff?
We are. We good. Belly full. Enough laughing. Okay, good start to the day. Thank you so much for coming.